Before we get going with the video, I would like to take a moment to say thanks to my patrons, because I wouldn't be able to keep doing this without you, so thank you so much for all your support. I'd also like to say thanks to Richter for his tier 4 sub this month, and special thanks to James Bond for his tier 5 sub this month. In this video, we'll start implementing the functionality that we need to be able to use the stats on the player's gear. Right now, we have stats on the gear, but we're not using it for anything. So let's get started on implementing that. So the first thing we need to do is to go to the player script, and in here I think we need to create a few variables that can hold those stats. Let's see, we have some different things, stats, mana, and so on. Let's just make a region here called stats and just end it down here, I guess. And yeah, we can open those up. So we have the stats region here, and this is the mana and the experience stat. We also should have a health somewhere. Let's see here. So let's go to definition of that. I guess that's because it is in our character. That's right. Okay. So all characters don't need these stats. Let's just do it in the player for now. I don't think skeletons and such need to have those right now. We can always move it up if we figure out we want to use it for everything. But for now, I think we should implement it so that the gear actually works. So let's make a private integer called intellect and a private integer called stamina and one called strength. So these three values are going to be used on the gear. So how do you do that? Well, we need to implement it so that when we use our bars, we need to use, or when we set the value on the bars, we need to set the value based on strength, intellect, and stamina. So this is our wizard we're working on right now. Strength is not going to give him anything. I think when we implement the warrior later, or the knight, or whatever we want to call him, then the strength is going to increase his attack power or something, or maybe his rage, or whatever we call it. It's just basically this is just to show the concept of how this is going to work. So let's jump to our set default values. Here we are going to set the default values, and these numbers that I'm putting in here are simply just something that I'll be using. You can use any numbers you want. So like, let's say 10, and strength in this case 0. So we will be changing this somehow when we start implementing the knight. So now we have set those up. At some point, we're also going to show these in the character panel. So when we open up the panel, when we play the game, of course, the stats are going to be shown. I don't think we can make it in this video, but here we should say strength, stamina, and so on. We need to place that here based on the gear that we equip, right? So if I equip the shoulders here, this values here should change based on the stats the shoulders have. But first, we're going to implement it so that the stats changes the health and mana. So let's see here. So now we have set this up. So we need to do something to set the values. Right now, we're just using these directly to set the initial health and initial mana and such. But I would like to base it on these values here. So what I'm going to do is to delete this. And I'm going to create a new method called private void reset health and mana. I guess that's a long name. What could you call it? Because it's not going to reset the health and mana, it's going to reset the strength as well. So reset stats, let's call it that. So reset stats is going to set our values for us. There are different things that we would like to do based on that. For example, I looked at World of Warcraft, how they implement it. For example, different levels gives different amount of stamina, health per stamina. So for example, level 1 to 10 will give you 1 health per stamina. But when you're level 60, you will gain 20 health per stamina. And we can try to do something like that. So the higher level you get, the better the stamina is. So even though your gear isn't that good, you will still get some kind of profit when you level up, because you now gain more health per stamina, for example. So we're going to use that as well. But first of all, let's say my health dot initialize. And here we're going to use our stamina. And the max value is stamina as well. And then we're going to do the same thing with the mana. But initialize. And what are we going to use? We're going to use the intellect and intellect. So I think I'm going to put in a flat out what's called rate. So it's just multiply by 15. So every intellect will give you 15 mana all throughout the game. Like that. So about the stamina, let's make that stamina multiplier thing here. So let's make a method that returns integer called stamina multiplier. Okay, so let's just make it for the first few levels. You can always adjust this. So if my level is less than 10, then return 2, for example, then you get 2 health per stamina. So else if my level is more than 10, then return 3, for example. Or let's say 2 here, and return 1 health per stamina from that. So below level 10, we have 1 health per stamina. Above level 10, we have 2 health per stamina. And out here we can return, let's say 3 or something, because we don't put in everything right now. So we're going to just multiply this by stamina multiplier. And we're going to do the same over here. Like that. So that's the health and that's the mana. We set up there by resetting the stats. So we say reset stats right here. So when we set the default values, we set them up here and we reset the stats so that the health and mana bar will adjust accordingly to intellect and stamina. So I think that is it for this one. We also need to, for this method, we also need to change some things when we level up, of course. But I guess we can do that a bit further down the road. I think I want to focus on getting the gear on the player to increase the stats. So let's try to test it out. If we close it down, remember to save. We open this up and let's see, we should change our, so now we have 50 health and 150 mana. And if we would go in here and change the initial stamina to 100, I guess we will have 100 health from the get-go here. Yeah, so now we have 100 health. But let's start with those 50. I think that's fine to not have that much health from the get-go. Again, these are things you can adjust if you want to. And actually, it should be pretty easy to do this when we level up. Don't we have a method called ding or something? See here somewhere. Search for it. Just need to select here. Ding. There it is. Let's go to that. This is where we level up. And I guess we could increase the stamina here. So let's say our stamina plus equals, and then we need to increase base stat method. Let's make that. Make a private integer called increase base stat. So these are our base stats. So when you level up, of course, your stats are going to get better slowly. So let's say if my level is less than 10 or something, then we return 5. So increase the base stat by 5 or something. Well, actually, let's say 3. And out here we return 0. So if you're above level 10, it doesn't work right now. Again, this is a dummy method. We should put in, so from level 0 to 10 it's something, from 10 to 20 it's something else, and so on. Or maybe just always return a flat value. That's up to you. Anyway, this increased base stat should be added to our stamina. And maybe you want it to be different from stat to stat, so you gain more stamina than intellect and something. So again, this is just me showing you how we could implement something like that. So we save here. And what else? Let's see. Let's try to actually level up and see if this works. So we go in here, see if I can remember what buttons we're using to actually gain experience. I think it was plus or something. So we're here. X maybe, yeah. Okay, so 600 experience. Oh, I forgot to do something. We forgot to reset the base stat. So when we've done this, we need to say reset stats, because we level up and we need to reset the bars so they reflect the right stat. It's very important we do that. And usually in games, or the games I've played at least, when you level up, you gain full health and mana. So sometimes that can actually save your life if you're like not that far away from leveling up. You can just level up and then you get full health and mana, and it will save you. So let's see here. Boom, we level up. And there we go. So you can see your stats are increasing every time you level up. 56, 240. So that's it. So now we can actually use the stats for something when we level up. So next thing we need to do is to increase the stats when we equip our gear. So we have the player. Let's just make a method. I don't really care where it's going to go anyway. Make a public method called equip gear. And it takes in a piece of armor. And we need to use that armor to increase our stats. So I guess you can already guess what we're going to do here. We're going to say stamina plus equal armor armor plus dot stamina. Okay, so we can't see the stamina on the armor. Let's go to that definition on the armor class, and here we have intellect, strength, and stamina. Let's just make some properties for these. Control RE, so that we make these properties down here so we can access it, which means I can go back to my player and say armor dot stamina, and I want to say intellect plus equal armor dot intellect, and what was it, strength plus equal armor dot strength. Okay, so now we actually increase our stats, and it needs to return void by doing this. However, we need to call this somewhere. So where do we want to call it? I guess we want to call it inside the char button. So let's just close all but this. So we have the player, and then go to our character panel, I guess, and we have buttons here and char button. So this char button is the button that is sitting on the character UI, the buttons that we are clicking to equip armor and such. And somewhere we actually have a equip armor method right here. So when we're done equipping our armor, I would actually like to say, what would I like to? I want to access the player. So I want to say player dot my instance dot equip armor. So now we have called that, we have equipped our armor, and we go to the player and say, hey, I also want to increase my stats, please. However, yeah, the stats are going to be increased, but we are not updating our bars yet. So we need to update our bars somehow, so that if you take off some gear, you should lose mana. If you take on gear, you should gain mana, and so on. But we don't want to reset it, because yeah, we could go in here and say we want to call reset stats, right? Well, if we do that, it should work. However, equipping gear will heal you to full, and that's not what we want. So let's just try with this first, and then we can make the little change we need to make sure that it works. Let's see if we get any exceptions or something. Might have made a mistake, so let's see. So we put on skill. Let's take on a helmet, and we gained mana. You can see health 54 and 300, and if I take it off, I do not lose it. So now I can actually just keep stacking my things to gain infinite stats. I can just take one thing off and put it on again forever. Anyway, you can see that it works. We gain our mana here, and health every time we put on some gear. But we don't want to do that, because in a case where I have lost health, somehow if I could lose, let's say I have this health, and I suddenly say, oh, I want to equip a helmet, and then I get full health. Well, that's not very good for the game, right? Because then you can just keep equipping gear to be invulnerable, basically, or immortal. So we don't need to use reset stats. We need to do something else. Let's go to reset stat and see where it is. Oops, should be able to do that there. Let's make one called update max stats. So update max stats is simply going to increase the max stats without changing the current value, so I can have 10 health and put on a helmet, and my max value increases without, and I still have 10 health. If you can follow me there, and that's what I want to do. So we actually need to make a new method, I think, on our health bar, because right now we're using initialize. I want to go in here, and instead of using initialize, I just want to take and copy it for now, so, and paste it below, and then I want to call the new one set max value. So this will only change the max value by saying max value equals max value, my current value equals current value, and then I don't want to change the fill. So my current value is the same, and my max value increases to the max value. Before, my current value or my constant fill amount would change, and I don't want it to do that here. The difference between these two is that the current value is not going to get passed in. It's only going to pass in the max value, and then the current value it's going to set is based on the current value it already has. So the current value is just going to be set on whatever it already was. Not even sure why. What does this do? Yeah, it sets the value on such. So the reason that we need to call current value is because there are a lot of things here that we need to call. And if we don't do this, then it's not going to work correctly. So let's just call current value like this. So now we have something called set max value. Let's try to use that or utilize that to increase our stat somehow, or increase our max stat somehow. So we are going to say my health dot max set max value. What is it going to be set to? It's going to be set to our stamina multiplied by our stamina multiplier, like that. And I'm going to do the same thing with the intellect, or mana, sorry. Mana, and then I'm going to use intellect here. And then I'm going to multiply it by 15. That's my flat rate, right? So I should maybe make a variable to hold this at some point. We could do that. Let's go here. Let's make a private integer called intellect multiplier, like that. And just set it to 15 here. And then we're going to use that where we're writing 15. Wow, I lost my place. The script is so big now I can't really find my way around. Let's see here. It's more up here, about here, I guess. And where are we? There. Okay, so here we are setting our things, and we're resetting our stats. Let's go there and say intellect multiplier, and here, and we're going to do the same here. I guess that's where so now we just keep using this, so we don't need to change one place, so we don't mess it up somehow. Anyway, this is update max stats is now set. We don't have rage here or anything attack power like, so it doesn't really matter. And where are we going to call this? Well, we were working on the equip gear, so let's find that somehow. There. And instead of resetting our stats, I want to update my max stats. Okay, so those are updated. Now let's try to run it and see what actually happens. Okay, so I put in some gear. Let's put a helmet on. And there we go. So I increased my max health, and the value stayed the same, as you can see. It's not because I'm losing health and mana, it's simply because the max value increases so that the current value is less of a percentage of the maximum. So you can see here. So now I can keep equipping this and gain stuff without getting full topped off with health mana. Okay, so the next thing is going to be dequipping our gear. So let's actually just take this, copy it, and paste it below. Call it dequip here. And let's say minus here instead of adding something, and we update the max stats. That's easy, right? So where are we going to call this method? Well, we are going to call it in the equip to place. Let's do one thing first. I think we have a decrypt thing here. So let's see, we have something called decrypt armor here. See in a breakpoint. And in here, I want to say when this is happening, when I'm sure that I have decrypted my armor, I will simply say player.myInstance.decrypt here my equipped armor. So I'm going to decrypt the equipped armor to reduce the stats. So there's one problem still, but let's just try to run this and see what actually happens. Let's see, let's try to fill up our inventory and put on the helmet. My stats increase 50, 100, and this one went to 300, and this one went to 54. So if I take off the helmet, it went back to normal. Okay, that's fine. I can actually equip and decrypt armor to increase and decrease my stats. However, I have two helmets. Let's see what happens when I swap them. I take this helmet and I swap it. So it's 50 and 150. And let's remember 54 and 300. So I swap them. So it's 62 and 520. Oh, I want to put this helmet back on. It's 66 and 675. So now I'm actually just stacking my stats by swapping armors. So if I take this one off, my base stats are now increased to 78 and 1050 here. So I also need to take into consideration what's going to happen when I swap armors. Okay, so where am I going to fix that? Well, decrypt armor is simply going to be called in another place. We also need to call it inside the equip armor method where we're swapping stuff. So let's see here, we have the equip armor up here. And where does a swap happen? A swap actually happens here, because I'm trying to remove the armor from the game or from my inventory. Then I say, well, if my equipped armor isn't null, well, then I have already equipped something on that place. Well, if it's the different armor, then I start adding the item to the inventory. So what I want to do here is to reduce the stats as well whenever I decrypt something. So I say player.myInstance.decrypt gear my equipped armor and save. Okay, so let's see what happens now. We'll try to run it again. Let's go. So we press H and open this up. So I have my helmet on if I click it. So 54, 300. I swap them around. 58, 375. I put this one up again. 54, 300. And if I take it off, I have my original stats back. So now we can equip armor, decrypt armor, and swap armor to increase our stats. So I think that's it for this video. In the next one, we are going to put in the stats here in the character panel. So whenever I equip this, it will show me that I have 10 strength now or whatever it is. And if I equip this, it will show me 10 intellect, 25 strength, and 4 stamina, plus whatever I have here, plus my base stats and so on. So that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching.